Welcome back to Healing Rehab. I'm your host, Yafa Shifra. Thank you for tuning in today. So, this segment is called Tea with Thoughts. Okay, today we're going to talk about a very sensitive subject, but we need to talk more about mental awareness. As you can see on social media or any other media platforms, we're losing a lot of celebrities to mental illness. Now, these are just the celebrities we're seeing in the forefront. But how many countless amount of individuals from all across the globe are suffering in silence with some form of mental illness? Mental illness is a very serious situation that is going on. In fact, it is an epidemic. And I know we're talking about, coronavirus. But if we look into it very carefully, we would actually see that this spread of PTSD and depression, we might as well call it a pandemic at this state. Yes, we're experiencing it as an epidemic within our own geographical location, but worldwide, this is actually as serious as COVID-19. So I want to give just some highlight or things not to do with people who you know are suffering or is suffering from any mental disorder. The worst thing you can say to a depressed person is, oh, pull yourself together. Honey, if they were able to pull themselves together, they wouldn't be in the downward spiral they're experiencing. I am in the mental health or wellness field. I am a life coach, but I do have studies that I have been accredited or accolades I have received through studying. And I've studied PTSD and have my certification in both PTSD and depression and some other types of trauma. I've literally seen where a person was telling someone, why are you choosing depression, when the person wrote on their Facebook media about this, their friend. And I had to literally check this person privately, like, why would you tell someone why they're choosing depression? No one chooses depression. This is all about neurotransmitters, chemical messengers. When they're not able to successfully pass through those neurons, having a balance of serotonin and dopamine also involved in those elements, people can have these imbalances mentally. Also, a lot of people have suffered through tremendous trauma there was a time where PTSD, it was referred to as shell shock for those who had gone off to the military and fought in some type of warfare, combat, okay, when they came back because they experienced such violence, they were diagnosed with what was called back then shell shock. And there was some other names after different events or world war that they call this type of diagnosis. But now we know it as PTSD in this modern day time. For those of you listening who may not know or understand what PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder. And so many factors can lead into this or trigger, such as childhood abuse, someone who was sexually assaulted. We have maybe someone who had a near-death experience, maybe from Hurricane Katrina, or even like the terrible hurricane that was experienced in the Bahamas, or an earthquake in Haiti, or anywhere geographically where lives were lost, or there was a high amount of stress and anxiety of not knowing if you're gonna live or die through this natural disaster. And so these PTSD, it coincides with depression, stress factors. It's all trauma triggered, depending. Okay, so we don't want to go around assuming, just telling people to pull out of these things. Some people, they're having a fight just to get out of their bed in the morning. And this is why it's so important that we're kind to those who are around us. Depression can range anywhere from mild, moderate to severe, the same as PTSD and your stress factors. So we want to be mindful. We want to be gentle and kind. People are fighting inner turmoils and battles that you can't see. People are smiling in public, but they're literally falling apart, deteriorating mentally and emotionally, psychologically, inwardly. So be very careful on how you approach people. Be careful what you say to them. Try to function in a very positive type of frequency. Stay away from jokes, harmful jokes. There's scriptures that talks about not throwing gesture, shades, in other words, at people. Some things you can say in the form of a joke can really be detrimental to someone because we're not aware of what type of atmosphere they came out of. If these things were said to them as children and it really, it gave them a beat down, or even as an adult, they may have been in very tumultuous or toxic relationships that contributed to these triggers. So if someone doesn't like something, it's not your place to say, oh, you're just being so sensitive. No, you're being insensitive, because anyone with emotional intelligence or any respect for humanity would know if a person set the boundaries with you to say, that joke was very painful. It's uncomfortable. You should respect that. The only reason we tell people, for those of you or people you have experienced who tell people you're so sensitive, is because you're being insensitive. You don't want to be held accountable for crossing those boundaries and inflicting additional pain or psychological disorder on people. Okay, so I'm going to keep it 100. I have a very low tolerance for insensitive people. We have to be very gentle and kind. We should make it a conscious effort. Okay, so let's continue on to things we shouldn't say to people suffering with PTSD and depression. Oh, cheer up. Do you know a severe level of depression or PTSD? Many people feel suicidal. Think about that for a moment. There's intense suicidal thoughts that they're fighting with daily. There's feelings of hopelessness, feelings of insecurities and extreme low self-esteem. There's fatigue, insomnia, where people cannot sleep. People overeat to cope with these types of illnesses. So when you say to someone, cheer up, you are invalidating the depressive mode this person is in. Why don't we shift these words into more positive and caring terminologies, or let it be a part of our vernacular, how we speak to people with kindness. Don't tell them this too shall pass, because depression feels relentless and never ending. So telling them this too shall pass when they feel that they're in this never ending pit, that's not going to help the issue. You should let them know, no matter how long you are suffering, I'm here for you, sweetheart. I'm here for you. Don't say to them, what do you have to be depressed about? You see how insensitive our society have become, and it's getting worse and worse as we get back into the dark ages ahead of us. Scripture talks about in the end time, man's heart is becoming wax cold. This is, in other terminology, narcissistic and toxic behavior. Okay? So when you say, what do you have to be depressed about? Oh, you have a nice family, friends, and home. Honey, you don't know what these people came through. You don't know how they're functioning. All these things are materialistic. These things, they don't buy your sense of self or mental wellness. It's just material possession, vanity. Some people have even said, oh, you're being so dramatic. Please have compassion. Depression can make you act in ways that is abnormal, because the chemistry in the brain is experiencing abnormality at this point. And so when you're telling them they're being dramatic, can you imagine a person fighting feelings of self-doubt and a lack of self-worth? And these feelings are real to them. Another one is, oh, you don't look depressed. Honey, what is the beautiful guy who just lost his life from Ellen DeGeneres show? Twitch. He was a happy-go-lucky fella, smiling all the time, dancing. Do you know a lot of comedians, they have pain? That's why they turn their pain into comedy to cope as a coping mechanism. Never go by looks, because that person can look so good on the outside, but they're falling apart inwardly. These are psychological, real events that are happening to this person. Don't tell them it's all in your head. Depression is just as serious as having cancer or some heart condition. Don't tell a person to snap out of it. I never invalidate them, letting them know, oh, things could be a whole lot worse than it really is, than what you're experiencing. They're trying to shake themselves out of this. Let them know you take their suffering very seriously. Don't tell them they're being selfish or you think you have it bad. Don't compare. Everyone's makeup is different. No two-person handle the same thing the same way. Do you know two people can go through the same exact tragedy or life-altering experience, but one will end up with PTSD and the other one, they don't have that problem. We're all made up differently, genetically. So we cannot expect everyone to respond the same way, even in the psychiatric field, the psychology field. The doctors who administer any type of medication for antidepressant or PTSD or, any type of stress, they don't diagnose the same medicine to each person because the chemicals, the makeup is different. So if you are given the same medication as the other person, it can have adverse effect. You can become even more suicidal in thought, whereas it can cheer that other person up. It can bring a balance chemically in the brain, in those neurons. So we want to be aware of those who are showing these types of mannerism. And I'm going to give you some traits you can look for, how to know if someone is depressed. Depressed, okay? All right. Mood swings. Someone can go from maybe 0 to 100. They can be happy 1 minute ago and then crying the next minute. That's a sign of depression. Sleeping a lot, not eating or overeating, binge eating, speech of hopelessness, a loss of interest in work or hobbies, or attending any type of social gatherings or functions, high anxiety, nervousness. A lot of men are irritable. They feel fatigue. They would vocalize these feelings. A lot of times women, they tend to be more in the sleeping zone or eating, overeating, or a lack of eating. Uncontrollable emotions. They always have this obsession with death, always thinking about death, because when you're dealing with PTSD and depression, there comes these feelings of anxiety and panic attacks as well. And we can talk about those things later. Okay? So look out for these things in your children, in your family members, in your coworkers, your friends. And let them know that you're there for them. Okay? Here are some things you can say to people who are depressed or who have verbalized it. You can tell them something like, I wish I had the right words to say, but just know that I care about you. I can't imagine how you feel, but I'm here for you if you need me. I'm sorry. I know that was important to you. You know, if they lost their job or something meaningful to them. Is there anything you need from me? It's okay to feel. Your feelings are valid. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of kindness and respect. Hey girl, let me know if you need to vent. Hey bro, I'm here if you need to vent, man. How can I make this easier for you to get through this? You know, in spite of all you've been going through, you've been doing really great with trying to be optimistic and positive through this. Okay? You can tell them all kinds of beautiful stuff. You can give them a silent hug or embrace. Just wrap your arms around them, depending on who the person is. If they're, you have that closeness to them, a gentle touch with sincerity attached to it. These things help. If you know anyone who's going through PTSD or depression, please direct them to a therapist. A lot of people may not be able to afford therapy, but you have different organizations or online services such as BetterHelp, where you can get as low as maybe $200 or less, depending on your income. They would decide that based on the questionnaire that you've answered, if money is a concern. Yeah, you can get as low as $200 for 4 weeks of therapy. So look into it. There's also governmental therapy aid within your cities or your state. You can call around to any help wellness prevention place and see from any clinic if they offer these types of services. Some they offer for free, and some you pay a small fee like $5 or a little bit more, but they have things in place to help you. You just have to find the correct information or resources. Also, if you know of anyone who is displaying suicidal attempts or tendencies, please seek out a hotline, an emergency hotline in your community to come and give that person aid. I hope you've learned something from this segment, and I hope you take depression and PTSD seriously and offer support to people who may be experiencing these types of mental illnesses. As often, I love you so much from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for tuning in today. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Peace be unto you, beloved.